Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, you're well. So, today I'm going to show you guys how you can go from having no qualifications to becoming a fully qualified chartered accountant. So, inshallah, make sure you do watch this video to the end. And as always, please do share the channel with others. Encourage people to like and subscribe. I really do appreciate the support. Let's get straight into it. So I'm going to talk about how you can go from no qualifications, so no GCSEs, absolutely nothing, to becoming a fully qualified chartered accountant. But before we go into it, let's recap how you become a chartered accountant. So you have to study for one of the three main chartered accountancy qualifications, and that's the ACA with the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, the ACCA or the CA qualification with the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Scotland. And what I will say at this stage, there is a fourth qualification, and that's called SIPFA, which stands for the Chartered Institute in Public Finance and Accountancy. However, in my 10 odd years of experience, I've only come across one person who's SIPFA qualified, and as the name suggests, it's more applicable to those who work in the public sector. And having worked in the public sector, I can tell you now, it doesn't give you more of an advantage than studying for the other three main chartered accountancy qualifications. So for now, we'll leave that one out. Now, I've said it before, it's not just good enough to pass the exams, you have to have practical work experience. And depending on the qualification you study for, that will be either 3 years or 450 days. And it's important to remember with the days that this does not include weekends or holidays or public holidays, and it only includes relevant work experience. So in reality, you may find that it takes about 3 years to gain those 450 days experience. So it's very similar. And just briefly, you don't have to become a chartered accountant. You can also become a management accountant, and that involves studying for the CIMA qualification, which stands for the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. Inshallah, in a later video, I will talk more about the pros and cons and the differences between chartered and management accountancy qualifications. But for now, we're just going to focus on how to become a chartered accountant. But I do want to make clear both qualifications are highly respected and both do make you a qualified accountant. So now that we know about the chartered accountancy qualifications, let's go through some of the typical entry requirements. Firstly, you can have any UK or Irish degree, and I really do mean any. So I've worked with people who have had degrees in French, politics, history, law, biomedicine, subjects that aren't linked to accountancy whatsoever, but they've gone on to become chartered accountants. But what if you don't have a degree? Don't worry, it's absolutely fine. You can enter with 2 A-levels and 3 GCSEs at pass grade, and this is the level where I entered when I joined my school leaver program. Or you could also have an NVQ level 3 or level 4. Now you might be thinking, hold on a minute, this guy said no qualifications, now he's talking about entry requirements. Don't worry, it's fine, I've still got you. I spoke about typical requirements just to show you that you can't enter directly into one of these chartered accountancy qualifications. So if you have no qualifications, there are 2 main options available to you. And I want to stress, these are just 2 options available, which I'm going to talk about because I think these are going to be the most popular. So you have something called the AAT ACA Fast Track or the ACCA Foundation route. So at this stage, you're probably thinking, what's he on about with the AAT? Well, the AAT stands for the Association of Accounting Technicians. And the great thing about it is that to study this qualification, there are no entry requirements. So you don't have to have any GCSEs, any A-levels, any degree. You can go in and study with absolutely nothing. But be careful because different learning providers may have their own requirements. So if you walked into your local college and said, I want to study for the AAT, you may find that they say, actually, you need to have some GCSEs or A-levels. But don't worry, there are many online providers out there. You can even self-study and go and sit the exams. You don't have to have any qualifications. The great thing about the AAT is that it's a stand-alone qualification. So if you went up to someone and said, I'm AAT qualified, the chances are they'd know what you're talking about and it would be very highly respected. I'm a big advocate for the AAT qualification because it really does go back to basics. So if you've got no qualifications, I highly recommend studying for this. And as part of this, you'll get an introduction to bookkeeping, so talking about recording accounting transactions, accounts preparation, which will focus more on the financial statements, interpreting and preparing those. You'll also study accounting software, which may come in handy as part of your day-to-day work. And as you progress through the qualification, you'll get an introduction and a more detailed focus on management accounting. And towards the end, at the last stage, you also have to choose a couple of optional units, and that can involve either tax and external audit or cash and treasury management. So I'd advise that you start at the level 2 stage. Now you can start at level 1. However, I think it's very basic. AATs sell it as a pre-apprenticeship route, and I wouldn't recommend starting at that stage. I think it would just be a waste of time and money. As part of level 2, you'll get a basic introduction to bookkeeping and accounting principles, and that should take you about 6 to 12 months to complete. And at this stage, it really does depend on you. So if you self-study and you just focus on the AAT, you may be able to complete it within 6 months. However, if you have a full-time job, you may take it at a slower pace so you can manage better, and you may find yourself completing it within a year. And the qualification is the equivalent of GCSEs. So once you've completed the level 2, you can then progress on to the level 3. Now this is where I started when I began my school leaver journey. And it took me about a year to complete because I was balancing it with work. But again, if you're self-studying, you can do it within 6 months. And inshallah, as part of this, it really does build on from the knowledge that you've already gained at level 2. So there'll be a deeper focus on bookkeeping and accounting principles, but they will also bring in financial statement preparation at this stage as well, and maybe an introduction to management accounting. And the qualification itself is the equivalent of A-levels. So once you've completed level 3, the next stage is level 4. Now this is the final stage, and what I would say here is, although the AAT advise it can take between 12 to 18 months to complete, you should be able to do it within 12 months, and that's how long it took me to do it whilst balancing work at the same time. So at level 4, you're focusing more on management accounting, and this is where you get the choice to do 2 optional units. So you can either do business tax, personal tax, auditing, cash and treasury management, credit management. These are the 5 options available to you. It's just worth noting at this stage that all of the exams at the AAT have a pass mark of 70%. So inshallah, once you've completed the level 4, you can apply for MAAT status. It basically means membership to the AAT body. And what that means is you could use those letters after your name to show that you're a member of AAT. But as I've said before, it's not just good enough to pass the exams. So you must be able to show that you've got relevant work experience at this stage. And I'd say you'd need probably about 1 year's experience because you have to show that you meet the requirements of certain competencies. So inshallah, once you've completed the AAT, you can then progress on to the ACCA qualification. I want to make it clear at this stage, you can progress on to the other qualifications such as the ACCA. Right? The reason why I'm focusing on the ACCA is because it's probably the most popular in the UK. But I want to make it clear, if at this stage you think I want to study for the ACCA, then that's absolutely fine. You can go and do that. But we're already talking about the ACCA later on in the video. So once you progress onto the ACCA, you can get up to 5 exemptions. And the number of exemptions really does depend on the optional units that you studied for at level 4. So as a minimum, you will get 3 exemptions. But depending on the units that you chose, you can get up to 5 exemptions from the ACCA certificate stage exams. And the other great thing is that your work experience as part of the AAT qualification can count towards your ACCA work experience. So remember, as part of the ACCA, you need to have 450 days. So you can get credit for prior work experience of up to 12 months. So inshallah, if we do the maths, at most, and this is worst case scenario, it should take you about 6 to 7 years to complete the AAT and ACCA fast track. So I'd say about 3 years at the AAT stage at most, and about up 2.5 to 3 years at ACCA stage. And I've given you about a year just in case you fail some exams and have to do some retakes. But alhamdulillah, it took me about 4.5 years to complete, and I started off at the level 3 stage. So what I will say, it really does depend on you and your employer. So firstly, whether your employer is happy for you to sit that many exams in a short space of time. And second, on you. How motivated are you to complete this route as quickly as possible? So at this stage, you may be thinking, what? Minimum 5 years of study? I'm not about that life. But actually what I will say is if you're looking for some motivation, go and watch my video on how much money an accountant makes, because it will give you a great insight to the earning potential and will show you how you can realistically expect to earn up to 100k and maybe even more once you become a qualified accountant. But you don't just have to follow the AAT route. You could study for the ACCA Foundation. Now the ACCA developed this foundation course because they wanted to ensure that their qualification was open to all. So if you've got no qualifications, the ACCA recommend that you start at the level 2 stage. So at level 2, there are 2 exams to take, and it's a very basic course. So it will cover mostly how to collect and record accounting data. So once you've completed the level 2, you can then go on to study for the level 3 qualification, which builds on what you've already learned and introduces financial reporting and management accounting. Again, there's 2 exams to do at this stage, and inshallah, once you've completed this, you will then progress on to the level 4 diploma in accounting and business. And as part of this, there will be more detailed understanding on financial accounting, management accounting, but there is also a 3rd exam, which will focus on business and technology. So more about finance in a wider context and a bit of introduction to some of the legal and ethical principles as well. It's worth mentioning that the pass mark for these exams is 50%, and you have to also complete the Foundations in Professionalism module. So if you start at the level 2 stage, I think it will take you about 18 to 24 months to get to the end of level 4. And that's because the ACCA recommend about 500 hours of study at level 2 and level 3. And about 900 hours of study at level 4. So similar to the AAT, once you've completed the level 4 diploma, you can apply for the CAT qualification, which stands for Certified Accounting Technician. As always, you have to have relevant work experience, so you have to have 1 year's experience, and you have to take 2 optional certificates as well. So the ACCA give you 3 options, and that's audit, taxation, or financial management. And you have to take 2 of these to get the CAT qualification. But what I will say is they're not required. So once you've completed the level 4 diploma, you can progress straight onto the ACCA. You don't have to do those 2 optional certificates. That's just if you want to get this CAT qualification. And inshallah, with your prior study, you will also get exemption from the first 3 ACCA exams. And again, similar to the ICAEW, you can get credit for prior work experience. So you don't have to get the full 3 years. They will count your prior work experience whilst you were studying for the ACCA Foundation course. So in total, it will take you about 5 to 6 years to complete. I want to give you some advice before I go. So my first piece of advice is prioritize your experience over your exams. Now, both are key and are required to become a chartered accountant. However, if you focus on your exams, most likely you'll be self-studying, and that can be quite costly. Whereas if you focus on getting a job, getting experience, you may impress an employer, and they may then offer you a training contract, which means that they cover the cost of your exams, saving you a lot of money in the long run. The other thing is, if you just focus on passing your exams, you may find that when you actually secure a job in accountancy or finance, that you absolutely hate it. You don't want to do this for the rest of your life. So actually, you may end up wasting a lot of times if you prioritize your exams over the experience. And if you're starting out with no qualifications, the one thing I would say is don't go around looking for training contracts, because it's very unlikely that someone will offer you a training contract with no qualifications. Why? Because you're an unknown quantity. The employer needs to know first that you're going to stick around in the long term and that you're worth the investment. So I've listed examples of entry-level roles you could do to get that experience. And just to strengthen my point about not looking for training contracts straight away, I'm going to give you an example. So I've worked with someone who joined a big organization as a temp, right? No prior accountancy experience, joined as a temp on maybe £9 or £10 an hour. And what they did was they impressed so much that within 6 weeks or so, they were made permanent. And in that time, they were self-studying, but they didn't tell anyone. And they got towards their final exams of the ACCA. The employer found out, and they were really impressed with the initiative that that person took. So they went back and said, you know what? We're going to pay you for all the exams that you did in silence without our knowledge. Now that person is looking to complete their ACCA and become a fully qualified chartered accountant. So it goes to show that if you just prioritize getting experience, working hard, then inshallah that training opportunity to become a chartered accountant will come to you. And the final bit is, always remember this is a long route. So good things will come to those who wait. Don't be put off by the long hours or the effort that you have to put in, because trust me, at the end of the journey, it is definitely worth it. So everyone, thank you for watching. I know it was a bit of a long video, but inshallah you found the information very, very useful. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below or message me on Instagram.